It is said that great truths are told in jest, and when Asus announced ROG Ally on April Fool's Day, something inside me whispered that this toy was too cool to not be real. And amidst the laughter and jokes of April 1st, Asus caught people's attention, and when the truth came out and it was revealed to be real, the new console/PC/whatever it is went straight on my wishlist, even without knowing exactly what was hidden inside it. However, I didn't know how good it was, and when I got to know the processor, I realized that Steam Deck will be in trouble. Meet the AMD Ryzen Z1 Extreme, an APU with 8 cores and 16 threads, which reach up to 5.1 GHz in boost, along with a graphics chip based on the RDNA 3 architecture that offers 12 compute units with a frequency of up to 2.7 GHz. All this with a consumption ranging between 9 and 30 watts, which would make, at least on paper, the ROG Ally devour the alternative from Valve. And this leads us to performance, where I don't necessarily want to go into detail because after all, we're talking about two different products. But I'm going to say it out loud. Ally seems to me a better purchase than Steam Deck. And for those of you who take performance into consideration, look, I'll throw some direct comparisons on the screen between the two in games. For a head-to-head comparison, I used both consoles on performance mode, that is, set at a consumption of 15 watts. The graphics settings in games were the same, and even if Steam Deck can only do 800p in 16:10 format, I preferred to keep things as balanced as possible. In Cyberpunk 2077, I got 45 FPS on ROG Ally, while Steam Deck maintained an average of 37 frames. Forza Horizon 5 also ran well, with 54 FPS on Ally and 41 on Deck, and Horizon Zero Dawn brought things into the 60+ zone with 62 frames per second on Ally compared to the 51 FPS obtained by the Steam Deck. And here I will stop the performance comparison between the two consoles, because no matter how much we continue it, Steam Deck will be left in a puddle of blood by the competition. And it's normal, given that the specs are from different worlds. Let's take for example the APU that I've been mentioning. On the processor side, Ally is armed with a Ryzen Z1 Extreme that uses the Zen 4 architecture, that is the same as on the Ryzen 7000 series. On Steam Deck, we have a custom chip based on the Zen 2 architecture that is on the Ryzen 3000 series. After which we take a look at the graphics chip, and even if the difference is smaller, the RDNA 3 architecture used for ROG Ally offers significant improvements compared to the RDNA 2 graphics cores on the Deck. Only the RAM is the same, 16GB LPDDR5. Of course, comparisons like this will keep appearing, because until now, Steam Deck has been the standard and pretty much the only one of its kind on the market, but I will try to keep these comparisons to a minimum. Many have assumed that with the launch of ROG Ally, Asus will try to take advantage of a market that is still at the beginning and will offer a product below expectations, built for profit. But what they achieved with ROG Ally is not just impressive from a performance perspective, but also from a price one. Valve sells its Deck starting from $420 upwards, the most expensive configuration having a price of $680. At the same time, ROG Ally is $700 in its most expensive version. That means for a $20 difference, you get a significantly better console. And not only does it beat Steam Deck in direct comparisons on the same games, set the same and at the same resolution, the console from Asus also has a few extra aces up its sleeve. Here I'm talking of course about the capabilities of the screen. The same 7 inches as on Deck, but with a superior resolution at Full HD 1920 by 1080 pixels and a refresh rate of 120 Hz. In its most expensive configuration, the screen on the Steam Deck offers a protective coating that fights reflections. Ally, on the other hand, comes with Gorilla Glass Victus as a standard feature, a trick borrowed from top-end smartphones. And the Gorilla Glass DXC coating ensures as few reflections as possible and prevents scratches, fingerprint smudges, and other messes that accumulate with daily use. The screen gets along well with the Ryzen Z1 Extreme chip, and Ally performs well at Full HD resolution too. Of course, for this I had to switch the console to turbo mode, which increases consumption to 25 watts. Additionally, Asus has implemented a fourth mode, if we can call it that, where consumption can reach 30 watts when the console is plugged in. So listen carefully now. In Cyberpunk 2077, I achieved an average of 34 FPS at Full HD, which is not exactly impressive, but that was until I saw the nearly 60 FPS average results I pulled in Forza Horizon 5 and Horizon Zero Dawn. In Forza, I recorded 57 FPS, while Alloy's early adventures were experienced at 53 FPS in Full HD. The performance was stable, except for a few moments where I recorded a bit of stuttering. Of course, we must also take into account the games chosen and the settings used. If you want to play AAA releases on ROG Ally, you have the option to lower the resolution to 900p with medium-high settings and perhaps some FSR. And this will allow you to enjoy all your games at 60 FPS or above. As for indie games, you don't even need to crank the console into turbo mode. And since we're talking about operating modes, let's quickly go through these. Turbo means 25 watts on battery and 30 watts when the console is plugged in. Performance means 15 watts, which is the consumption of a Steam Deck at maximum capacity, and Quiet is the power saving mode, which doesn't do a great job in terms of performance, but draws only 9 watts from the battery. We already talked about turbo and performance modes, and I think we've clarified things. We just have the quiet mode left, and this is where the first problems appear. The processor, although very high performing relative to its consumption, is fundamentally a laptop chip. This doesn't mean it doesn't perform well at low consumption, but in silent mode at just 9 watts, it still consumes 3 times more than the Steam Deck, which can go down to 3 watts. This means that battery life in browsing, multimedia and other tasks that do not require hardware will still be shorter on ROG Ally than on Valve's alternative. How much shorter? About 6-7 hours for Netflix and YouTube. And in turbo mode, in something like Cyberpunk 2077, you should expect a maximum of 2 hours of gameplay. But ROG Ally can also be used in desktop mode. And the USB-C port on it allows you to connect a USB hub from which you can go with a monitor, mouse, keyboard and whatever else you need. Or, if you can afford it, you can buy a separate ROG XG external unit, which has a dedicated graphics card that you connect to the console's port. And in this way, you have a laptop Ryzen 7000 processor in combination with something like an RTX 4090 or a bit weaker. So the performance potential is much greater on Ally than anything the competition could offer. Of course, at a cost, but in this scenario, we are already talking about a full PC with Windows 11 and full support for peripherals, screens and so on. And now let's talk about the problems. And just like that, we have reached the software part, which is also the Achilles heel for this device. At first glance, everything seems fine. You have Windows 11 with the Armoury Crate SE graphical interface. This means you can calmly install any gaming platform you want, whether it's Steam or anything else. In reality, however, Windows 11 is still not quite stable. Of course, you might say this is not so much about ROG Ally, but is someone else's problem, namely Microsoft's. But what was up to Asus is the Armoury Crate, which is a mess when it comes to stability. And when you combine them with a non-traditional control scheme, serious problems arise. Navigating through Windows is frustrating from the touchscreen, and when it works, the right stick doesn't exactly make life easier. The situation with Armoury Crate SE isn't any better. I understand that Ally needed a custom graphical interface, but the current one is neither useful, beautiful, nor very well thought out, and there are settings and functions related to the console lost in all sorts of random menus. And the integration with Windows 11, as I was saying, is poor. And here I can't even blame Asus. You have a dedicated button that displays the desktop, a button for the console's quick settings, programmable buttons on the back for macros and Windows functions, and so on. But even with a mouse and keyboard, you can't fix what Microsoft has messed up. The interface is cumbersome, but what really annoys me is the lack of functions dedicated to touchscreen devices. All these tiny buttons are almost impossible to press if you have thick fingers like mine, and the interface doesn't respond to the commands you would expect it to respond to. For example, you need to double click and hold to drag a window on the screen, because this Windows 11 doesn't know about drag and drop. From this point of view, the Steam Deck has by far the more mature interface. Everything works properly there, but you also have fewer things to lose yourself in, and Valve, with its Steam Big Picture, did a great job applying a successful graphic interface over the operating system. Sure, I have no doubt that things will improve for the ROG Ally, but there is still some waiting to do. But let's look at the bright side. From a compatibility perspective, the ROG Ally has the advantage. Yes, the Steam Deck is good and runs games on Linux, games that no one expected to play on anything other than Windows or traditional consoles, but the list is still limited. Some anti-cheat systems still don't work, and bugs in unoptimized games are so much harder to bypass or solve on Linux. In some cases, we're not even talking about solutions, but about real challenges for the user. And that leaves us with one solution: to be patient with the ROG Ally and wait. The Steam Deck also had its problems at the time of release, and some still persist today, so I don't see why the Ally's case would be different. Especially since we're on Windows 11, an operating system that causes problems even on some modern PCs, so I can have very different expectations from a newly released portable console. Returning to the features, when compared hand in hand, the Ally and Steam Deck seem close in weight, but the Ally seems easier to handle thanks to its smaller dimensions. And even though normally this doesn't really matter, the weight to volume ratio is important for a product you use handheld 90% of the time. The ROG Ally is more compact and at the same time seems more solid in terms of construction. The materials used by Asus are excellent, and whichever way you turn it, the Ally is robust and well put together. But like the Steam Deck, the problem isn't necessarily the shell, but rather the buttons. The story repeats itself with the Ally, whose Xbox buttons feel like I'm pressing a steak, not a membrane. Plus, I've noticed what others have mentioned in reviews: I managed to jam the buttons under the shell. They don't stay in position well, and the firmer press deviates them from the path they should travel. The triggers are not much better, they are just as small and fragile, but the sticks really impressed me. They are far superior to those of the Steam Deck and are arranged in an asymmetric format, much more ergonomic than what is offered by PlayStation-style controllers. Over longer periods, I noticed that I prefer to play on the ROG Ally, but at the same time, I came across an annoying drawback. If you have larger palms, the edges at the bottom will poke you in a sensitive area, in the soft area between the thumb and the ring finger. At least the Ally doesn't burn your palms, something the Steam Deck seems to like. And no matter how funny the name of the cooling system in the ROG Ally, the so-called zero gravity, it does its job very well. The internal fans are quiet and don't generate much noise, and when hotspots form, they are usually in the ceiling between the triggers. This means you won't accidentally touch the hot area and you don't normally have your fingers there. In terms of weight, the ROG Ally weighs 608 grams, about 61 less than the Steam Deck. It doesn't sound like much, but after an hour or two, you start to feel those few grams. Oh, and don't think that Republic of Gamers would release something without RGB lighting. The Ally comes with a luminous ring around each thumbstick, and the lighting can be controlled as usual from Armoury Crate. It's not something disturbing and it's not blinding. It actually helped me when I was playing at night, because I could find the sticks in the dark immediately. The RGB lighting can also be synchronized with other devices from the manufacturer, such as the ROG Cetra wireless headphones, so you stay in the ecosystem if you have more Republic of Gamers products. However, if the headphones are not to your liking, and you want to play on speakers, the ones included on the Ally are quite good. We have two pieces placed laterally, which come with background noise cancellation technology with the help of an AI, as well as support for formats such as Dolby Atmos and high-res audio. They sound good even at maximum volume without significant distortions, and at 80% of the volume, I found the perfect balance. Now that I have introduced you to the new ROG Ally, all that's left is for me to decide whether to recommend it or not. It offers a powerful and current hardware configuration with room for improvement. The platform is at the beginning. After all, we're talking about Zen 4, an architecture that still needs improvements itself. The graphics chip is RDNA 3, so it will support FSR 3 when the miracle will happen, and with Asus's promise that the graphic interface will also enjoy optimizations over time, I think the potential of this console is quite large. Then we have the excellent screen. Many were hesitant to buy the Steam Deck precisely because of the display, but now that there is an alternative, albeit slightly more expensive but much better, I think many will muster the courage to take the leap and buy such a portable console. And to round off the story, I'll come up with a very realistic use scenario. I've been looking at a Steam Deck for a while, but Linux and the screen made me steer clear of it. But now that the ROG Ally exists, if I get one, I would immediately put the Steam Big Picture interface on it. As the Asus Armoury Crate is what it is, I preferred to change it. The good thing is that Windows is full of applications, so you can customize your experience even further. From me, the ROG Ally gets a thumbs up, and until proven otherwise, I don't think there's a better alternative on the market. And for those who are worried about the price, don't forget that ROG is still preparing another model of Ally, probably an SE or Lite, and that will probably be equipped with a non-extreme Ryzen Z1. That processor is only 200 MHz slower than the extreme version, and the video card is weaker. And that will probably be a console just right for indie games with a focus on battery life. So Asus might eventually conquer this pocket console market with Windows. And now tell me in the comment section, what do you think of the ROG Ally? Overlooking the inherent imperfections of any newly launched product, what do you think of this idea of a portable PC/console in 2023? Do you like it or not? I thank you for watching this video, subscribe to our channel for many other news that will come, and I wish you all the best.